Hello and welcome everyone for another webinar here representing our new software, Valitracks. This is Dr. Doraid Matani, the CEO of Navimed Group and the founder of Valitracks, the world's first full-stack linguistic validation platform. And I will be discussing here further aspects of Valitracks, digging into some of the issues that we might not have covered in the previous webinar, which was more professionally relating to linguistic validation as a process, rather than more organizational issues and other professional challenges that different players might have while performing or participating in linguistic validation and in COA or COA or eCOA instrument development. So let me share my screen with you, and I will jump into the topics here. So we will be covering three major points here. One of them is linguistic validation, the organizational approaches, the need to migrate to electronic linguistic validation process with Valitracks, and Valitracks as a smart solution. Of course, we will be here giving you some of our thoughts on this, and we will be welcoming your input and your participation in the open discussion that we're opening with these webinars. And we can also organize with some of you professionals from different organizations follow-up webinars to discuss the issues that you face and maybe some solutions that you might like to have additionally in Valitracks and in our digital solutions or in our approach. So let's jump into the organizational challenges. So we have here, as you watch here, you're having different practice, and the reason behind it is that we have different players. So we have the COA developers or the COA developers that are research organizations, departments within pharma companies, universities. It might be also CROs or departments within CROs, groups of doctors and professionals, and all of them are psychometric experts, etc. So all of those are part of what's called co-developer teams. In each domain, in each subject in medicine, there's a different developer group that has on its in its interest different aspects. So if we go and we look at the list here of different perspectives, we can see the COA developers, we can see the pharma companies, we can see CROs or contract research organizations, language service providers, and regulators. So I'm bringing here regulators, although it might not be the case many times that regulators are involved in a COA development, as COA development is not so far is not so much regulated, and many times it's just a common or good practice that is recommended to providers and they many times stick to the methodology of ISPOR. I will speak about this later on, but we do think that there is a window of transparency that we should have, and we should give a live access to regulators, and we think that that's a pioneering approach that might be maybe before regulations jumping into this, but it's something that will happen anyway. So all of these players here have different practices. You cannot compare the research industry or the scientific industry with the pharma industry. Different motives they have, different practices, different standards, different laws that they have to follow, of course, different resources and different tools. And this brings a very big challenge here that many times LSPs in this case and CROs many times they are not prepared to, and that's what brings the need to a joint platform that can facilitate all these differences and bring them together into one process. So that's the first thing. So I will be jumping into many of those topics. The first thing is the different practices. So of course we have I just prepared for you some of the different points that consist or that builds each process for each of those entities. So you can see that we have different endpoint analysis. So LSPs are looking into the linguistic approach or the linguistic point of view. Many of them they are focused on the theory. Many times that's a very big challenge we have with translators, with the linguistic experts, that they are not able to absorb the fact that many times the actual in-field results are contrary to the understanding of the language of professionals. I can give you an example from Arabic, which is a very complicated language spoken by more than 350 million, and it's still called one language, but in fact, in linguistic validation, it shows how it's not a united language anymore, and that using the official Arabic version of it's called the SMA standard modern Arabic. It's not working, and it's not absorbed by patients many times in countries that have been colonized by France. So like Morocco and Tunisia, they would have in their own dialect many French words, and in their own understanding for medical stuff, you have to put many times you have to change the SMA version, and you have to give them something that is not that's not really Arabic. Many times could be French, but that's the value of in-field testing. So the endpoint here for an LSP many times is contrary to the endpoint that comes with the researchers, for example, the developers, the psychometric experts, which many times are thinking about statistics, analytics. They're running their own statistical tests. They're trying to understand how the concept was absorbed by the local patients or participants. And this is many times challenging because the truth is somewhere in the middle between those two, and the project manager, whether it's a CRO company or whether it's the developer themselves or whether it's the LSP, he has to understand the complexity of this. And having this on so many platforms makes it very, very challenging. Another thing is the different focus. So as we said, the LSP is focusing on many times on the tone, on the syntax, on the language, and the co-developer might have regulations, might have time frame limitations, might have statistics, as we said, in their own interest, and this leads to discussion, of course, that is many times performed over many platforms, and it's not utilized for further many times because of the limitations of time, platforms, and of practices. Then we have the project management, of course, number of project managers. So when I'm covering number of project managers, many times co-developers don't have many project managers. They're working one or two project managers while they're trying to migrate 100 instruments, while the LSP might be providing 10 or 20 project managers work with them, so they don't have really the capacity to communicate with all of them throughout emails and throughout phone calls and throughout Zoom. And this would be very, very beneficial, as we really see while using Valitracks, to unite everything in one platform. So we have we utilize our time and our means, and we use them for the really problematic aspects of this process, rather than on the organizational stuff. Another thing is the QA process that might be very, very different, as we said. Each of those industries might be dependent on different regulators, different practices. LSPs would be focused on translation standards, ISO 17100, and then you have the QA developers, which would be stick to ISPOR best practices, or they would be looking at FDA, EMAS regulations. Another topic that is very, very evident here is the fact that the troubleshooting is very different between the industries, and it's really evident when we have challenges between we have challenges within the instrument between linguists and QA developers. So we see that the approach of linguists many times would be trying to reference and trying to prove that they're right, while the approach of the developers would be trying to understand the trouble and where it comes from, and trying to find solutions so that the participants are able to understand the instrument. So here the science, or the linguistic science, meets the reality of clinics and clinical world, and here we have to also find a really good platform of communication. And part of this communication would be learning from previous experiences. And one of the main traits and benefits of Valitracks is that it provides you as a provider the ability to look back onto different previous projects in the same language, maybe in the same domain, and learn backwards on your processes, on your providers, educate them, and provide intervention before any trouble in next projects appears. So if you see that there's a provider or a translator or an interviewer that has an issue with understanding that there might be a difficulty in high language, you might need to change him, or you might need to give them a debriefing call, or understand that, so they understand the core of this job, that it's a research job rather than it's being a scientific, linguistic work. So that's another. I'm trying to shed light on another aspect of challenge that we face in this process. So as we said, we have different standards that each industry is used to, and we're trying to move on and customize our standards based on the needs of the client, and based on the experience also from each domain, country, and maybe disease. So this is building the customized process does not mean only building a methodology that is unique for each company or each disease or each domain. No, this means also to be able to read the previous mistakes that have been done in some domain or in some country, and trying to build better processes for the future. So as we have the best practices, FISO for translation, we have ISPOR, which is one of the gold standards in linguistic validation. The papers that have been published many years ago already. They have not been, unfortunately, updated very often. There are frequent yearly updates, but we think that's not enough. Many times it lacks the specificities of the challenges that might face a validation process. That's just normal. You cannot dig into everything, but giving this platform, Valitracks is able to give you the tools to customize your own processes and to be able to run your own statistical tests and really smoothly migrate your questionnaires and perform the QA development of course, then paper publishing in a much smoother way, in much more tools, much more data that you can get and much faster. So that's one of the things that we see. So the different standards actually mean that we need to rewrite our approach, and we are not able to do that with the multi-platform, multi-process, and multi-participant process right now that we have. And the thing here that we want to do is that we want that all the participants in your process are in one platform, and you can utilize all the data that is within this platform and start building better processes, enhancing your results from one validation to the other, increase your speed, and eventually, of course, decrease your costs and benefiting from better results. So, of course, we have one of the main things that are determining the instruments validity is those 4 points that are very important for psychometric developers and experts when developing COA instruments, which are content validity, reliability, construct validity. Okay, so we have here one missing thing. It's internal validity also. Anyway, another issue is so all those points that are mentioned here and that I mentioned are actually being tested by different statistical tests that today they're performed usually only on the English version or on the source version while developing the first COA. And the reason behind it is that COA actually is not really regulated, or is not really a must to be verified by the relevant entity within the FDA. In this case, it would be DCOA or the individual drug development program. It depends. Do you like to use the COA instrument within the clinical trial of a drug, or would it be used in another context? Of course, the COA is approved only for a context of use, for a specific context of use, and this poses a challenge here on the linguistic validation process. So for now, the linguistic validation process is just a best practice many times. Of course, it's performed, but it's not performed in a enough precise way. And it's by saying that, I mean the fact that the COA was approved to be internally valid, and the content and the construction and the reliability are okay in English for the United States of America. This does not mean that we do not need to run psychometric tests for French in France and for Italian in Italy. So there are tests, and it differs really very much on the content, on the researcher, etc., etc. But we will provide you, while using Valitracks, the ability to really smoothly start running actually psychometric tests on your own linguistic while doing your linguistic validation process. So we are providing actually a linguistic validation process additionally to a psychometric and scientific validation process, which should be done anyways, in our opinion. Me as a medical doctor, I can assure you that it's very important, and I cannot perceive validity in one country to be certainly valid on another culture, another medical practice, another reality in different countries. So of course it's a must. I think regulation will come also to ensure this, but that's not the case right now because we need to speed up the clinical studies, and we understand that. So we want to give you as a researchers the tool to start utilizing that. And we do have this ability in Valitracks. We can build you as many psychometric tests as you want. We can make sure that the testing is performed, and at least to have a better combination of results, of quantitative results, to be able to have a better solution and a better instrument at the end of the day. Okay. Another thing is the different tool used here. So one of the benefits of Valitracks, as we said, it's a platform that was built in a way that takes into consideration the practices within the pharma industry, practices within the LSP or language service provider industry or language industry, and the scientific providers or the co-op developers also and their practices. So the goal of this platform is, of course, the enhancing of the results of the core instruments that are developed in different languages. We want to make sure that patients around the world and non-native language, or basically non-native English speakers, are not being forgotten, and that they are provided as good of clinical assessment within clinical research as English speakers. And to do so, we built a tool that is able to join all of those tools that are used by those different providers. As you see, there are many QA tools that are used, different QA tools by different providers. There are different ECOA softwares that are last year's, because of the transformation, the slow transformation, but there is a transformation from COA, which were printed, to a ECOA, electronic COA, that are used over tablets, phones. The patient use them and answer them this way, and different CAT tools that are used by LSPs. CAT is a computer-assisted translation tool. And the TMS means Translation Management System. Okay, different eTMF systems. Okay, that's for trial master file, electronic trial master file systems, which are used in clinical trials. Different documentation tools and regulations. So we do want to have the ability to give regulators a live access as we give for our clients, let's say, as a linguistic validation provider, we do give our COA developers a live access to comment, to see, and to interfere in at any step of the process, to be able to get the best results within the shortest amount of time. And we do think that giving this access to CDER or to EMA or to any regulator, even though they don't request it and maybe they don't have the tools right now to do it, but we think that it's an essential thing to do. Maybe we can find an equation to even to give them some sort of access or to provide some documentation. But we are we built this system in a way that even though the regulator is not so much focused on it, we do give the access for or the potential access for them, while keeping the highest level of documentation as possible, so that any time that any check or recheck happens, we can provide the answer for what happened at any and every step of the process. Of course, one of those things, as I touched it just before, is that the pharma companies, the CROs, the COA developers, and the LSPs, they do not have the same resources. If we speak about the number of staff, the budgets, the time that they can allocate for this, they have different access to different tools, and this makes it very challenging for giving the same level of service. And when we provide everyone the same tool, we are able to give every one of them all the tools that they need or they might need in this process, so that we ensure that the level of service is acceptable, and then we can get the best results. So you can see here many aspects of these different resources. So as you see that you can have the pharma or the sponsor of the study on the top, CRO, then you can have the regulators, and then the LSPs. And when we speak, this is usually the hierarchy within the linguistic validation process, and we want to make sure that this hierarchy does not affect the quality of the service that's provided by each one of those, and that the interactions are smooth, and by having this digital tool, trying to flatten this curve or these differences in a way that makes it easier for us to produce and focus on production rather than on technical issues or different or issues that stem from differences between those entities. So that's one of the goals of this initiative, of this program, is that we want to make sure that those different differences between the resources that are available for each of those is not affecting the quality of the outcome. Okay, so the solutions. So I already touched also in the previous webinar quite a bit Valitracks, and in this webinar I already touched many aspects of it. But I would like to continue touching other aspects of this. And I will be speaking here at Valitracks. Again, Valitracks is a digital, cloud-based, all-stack platform for linguistic validation process and code development. And it's a quite interesting platform that we work really long and hard on it to reach this point. And it's built, as we said before, just 1 second before, it's built unbiased, which means we try to ignore this hierarchy. Of course, we do respect the access and the layers of authority between those entities, but we try to give each one the tools they need. We give it in a joint package, as we said, and we have a built-in SMS system for linguistic validation. We have a built-in CAT tool. We don't want any linguistic service provider to come and start using their own platform or their own CAT tool and messing up the translation or the practice that is the developers used to. So we have our own CAT tool there that is able to import any file to the platform, and it's able to export files as well. And you can use them, of course, in your own platforms afterwards. We don't want you to go out of this platform, basically. That's one of the main things. And the reason behind it is we want to make sure that everything is documented within this platform, and that is everything is approached in a live manner. You can approach any step, any progress at the same moment that it happens. And the reason behind it is that one of the main things that we noticed within the experience that we have in linguistic validation is that the time frame is very challenging here. One of the reasons is the recruiting process, which is very challenging. And the live track here is very essential. We had many times troubles with translators and interviewers that actually were not telling the truth. They were saying that they're progressing while they were not starting the process at all. And of course, this is an issue of trust, of course. The goal here is not policing the suppliers, but we want to have the ability to tackle any problem at the same moment when it happens. And this is the issue. When you are dealing with thousands of providers, hundreds of providers, it's just a statistical thing that a trouble might happen. It might be really some disease that someone of your suppliers had, but you want to have the ability to tackle it when it happens. Of course, we have a different access management. We have a different platform, user interface, of course, a different ability to view different windows and stats for each one of those. So you have the pharma companies, the CROs, the developers of the COA instruments as well. You have the project managers access from the LSPs, project managers from regulators, and we have also other user interfaces that I did not include here for patients, for clinicians, for caregivers, etc. Okay, so as we said, we have our own CAT tool that's customized for LSPs, and it's customized also for linguistic validation process. So one of the challenges that the industry has, and that we frankly don't face so much in medical linguistics, because when you work on professional levels, most of the providers don't do this. But enabling the fact that many CAT tools enable machine translation is a very dangerous thing in linguistic validation and using CAD tools within linguistic validation, and we just don't have this ability in our CAD tool. And the reason behind it is that we want 100% human translation, as this is a human process, and the core of linguistic validation is checking this in a clinical setting, and therefore there is no place here for any God forbid math, MT or machine translation interference, and it can eventually, of course, cause many troubles for us. The next point that I will be covering here is that the tool is a CAD tool, as we already covered, and it gives us the ability to have constant follow-up. As I said, it gives the ability to have immediate feedback, discussion that is performed between all of the parties involved in the process is accessible by any device at any moment. You can provide your comments to the process. You can add requests, of course, and this leads to fast troubleshooting and lowers the delays. Of course, the easiness of the access also is a thing that you don't have to be at your office with your laptop to be able to follow up on your projects. You can go just with your phone from home and see what's going on and see how things are developing, and maybe follow up on things and comment on them, even while you're at home, out of office. So I already covered this cloud section in previous while explaining previous slides. As we said, we have a customized cloud section for discussion for each of those sections. That's very specific, and you can utilize this in a very beneficial way. Okay, this is a very interesting thing that we have in Valitracks, and it's something that might be interesting for developers and pharma companies, CROs as well. You have the ability to control your own process. So we do not build the linguistic validation for you. We are aware that you might have a medical device PRO, and you might have a clinical trials PRO, and you might have 100 different instruments and different resources, time frame. And as you see, I just gave you an example. You can perform 2 forward translations, one reconciled version, and one back translation. You can perform also 4 and 2 and 20 cognitive debriefings and 10 clinical reviews. And this just your own decision. The platform is built in a way that gives you the ability to do whatever you want, and to build it in a way that is meeting your time frame, your budget, and gives you the best results. Another point that I would like to share with maybe developers, Western developers. So our platform is producing a full documentation of your process, and this means that our platform gives you a report for each translation, and the comments that were added to this translation, the whole discussion feed of the translation, with a unique user signature, with a signature of issuing of this document, This is very important for your documentation in the future, to have this in your archive, to know how to benefit from some mistakes that happen. This is very important for your QA process and for your deep learning and further development of your processes and changing and adapting them according to this. Of course, we have a different thing that we have is the interview recording option. Of course, we have here at Valitracks a built-in video conferencing tool that is just synchronized with our system, and you can perform an interview with the patients or the participants. You can, with their consent, record it. You can create many versions within the translation. So if the translator is changing the version, or the project manager, all this is documented. Any section opening is immediately documented, so it's saved and nothing can be changed without administrator's approval and without it being documented for your learning process. There is, of course, an internal system for you to interact with users, speak. You have a messaging system within. And of course, also there is a follow-up process that it's very unique, actually. It gives you access to certain sections that have not been understood. If you want to add sections or add questions in your cognitive briefing interview, all this will be done as a different project. Sorry, it will be done as a follow-up to the same project, and it will be documented as a follow-up as well. It's really overwhelming to describe this software in a presentation. As you see, this is another webinar, and we're not able really to show you everything, but I'm trying to give you the idea, and you're welcome, of course, to raise any questions and to bring also any requests, and you can also book a call with us later on. Okay. Another point here is that we give the ability, and we are aware that not all COA is eCOA, and not all LV or linguistic validations will tomorrow turn into linguistic validations. But generally, COA is slowly turning into eCOA, as well as linguistic validation will be turning into linguistic validation. And we think it's your own interest to start migrating your data for the linguistic validation process, to have also a smooth migration to eCOA. And we have within the platform the ability for it to give you to just use it as a documentation tool and follow-up tool. So if your patients if your interviewers are validating a COA or a normal instrument, paper instrument, and they are doing a face-to-face interviews, they can still record it as an MP3, for example, and upload it there to the platform. And instead of filling up some Excel files, the questionnaire, you can already pre-build it in a way, the questionnaire in a way within Valitracks to fill up the data, so that you make sure that all of your data is already digitalized. Also your normal or traditional COA processes, and this is very beneficial because the value of Valitracks is not only in its ability to synchronize automatically with any eCOA process, but Also with its documentation and live track of the interactions between the entities, it gives you lots of benefits. Okay, when we speak about this interview, you can enable the interview between the patient and the interviewer within the platform. You can enable video and audio. You can choose what you want. You can choose voice recording or not. And it's an interactive platform. You can see it after if you book a demo. The platform is not the same as for the patient as it's for the interviewer. The interviewer has the ability to live edit the answers immediately while the patient is answering, or he can just focus on the interview and record it and then edit the answers later on. There are so many potential functionalities within the platform. Platform is able also to increase the speed of the data collection, as it is within the interactive platform, able to edit those answers of the patients and then generate an automatic summary report. So the summary reports is one of the things that we're really proud of and that we worked very hard on and that we're still developing, as we think it's not something that is one version. Okay, so today traditionally the interviewer goes, he performs an interview, he has to go to fill up the questionnaire. It takes time, then he has to go and to do a summary report. Then maybe the study provider or the study sponsor might go and say, okay, we want to run some statistical tests. Can we? What we do? So in Valitracks, you are able to edit or insert the answers of the patients to the specific questions that you predetermine. It's your choice, and eventually to edit the answers as well to the specific question. And Valitracks is able to run basic statistical tests and give you a very rich summary report. The moment the interactive platform was filled, or the questions within the interactive platform were filled, you have the report, and you as a co-developer or as a sponsor, you have immediate access to this report or to the summary report. You can start running your tests as well and start giving your comments and your requests to your suppliers. And this just makes it much easier, and you get much richer reports and insight into your processes. Of course, there is another ability here to add statistical or psychometric tests. So as I said, our platform is built in a very smart way that enables you to collect as much data as possible from your patients. And part of this data is the actual understanding of the concept for each participant. And this gives you the ability to run some psychometric tests that you can predetermine before. Those tests are not many times used by within linguistic validation, but we think they're essential to provide an equal result for this development. and to make sure that they really have internal validity or they are reliable, let's say, we have to run some psychometric tests. And this is in the hands of you developers to predetermine before you build the questionnaire within Valitracks. You can do it yourself, or you can contact us and we will do it for you. You can say, okay, I want to run a t-test on this concept. I want to run a retest on this concept. And this is something that's possible within the platform and for linguistic validation. Okay. So what's our view for the future? Let's call it vision. So one of the things, or one of the main things that Valitracks can give you tomorrow, or as an immediate result, is that if you will be willing to turn your paper data or your scattered data that is within your platforms of tens of years of linguistic validation, you can just import it into our platform and start with us building algorithms and trying to understand the challenges that you are facing in each process. Okay. The second thing is that this is as we see it, an inevitable process. As COA is transforming to eCOA, linguistic validation will be transforming to electronic linguistic validation. And just as when you do it faster, and we're frankly the first platform in the world that does this, and we welcome anyone to join us. You will be winning lots of leverage, and you will be providing a better product to your customers and to your research. You will dramatically, and we have this experience with our language service providers, you will dramatically and immediately troubleshoot many compliance issues and many delay issues within your team. You will encourage lots of transparency. You will be very surprised how more transparent your process would be. And you will be before regulations. As I said, you will be a pioneer within the industry because the regulation will come, we think, especially if such a platform is available. Another thing that we did not talk about is that we're building within Valitracks a community of interviewers, of patients and patient relatives that are willing to participate in linguistic validation. We try to also share those resources between each other, and of course with consent of the patients, with consent of all the participants. And eventually, we believe that this will eventually considerably decrease your annual costs. When you build your own processes, your algorithms, and we continue digitalizing these processes, we will be able to decrease those costs by tens of percents, as we believe. Okay. Of course, this also will enable you to customize your processes, to have your own guidelines within the platform, to building each process for each instrument, group, country, etc. And you can tackle those issues while walking. It's much easier when you are using this platform. And of course, as we said, building algorithms and enhancing your learning of each community, of each language, of each country, of each disease, of each specific instrument that you're building, or you're, let's say, extending the context of use. It depends on the constellation. But anyway, building a algorithm is very essential in this case to improving the results and refraining from any handicaps that the process might have in different constellations. Okay, again, I'm Doraid Matani, and I'm willing and happy to speak with you about Valitracks. I would like to have a discussion with any professional, whether it's in a linguistic validation provider, a co-developer, a pharma company. I invite you to book a demo with us. We are actually choosing our participants and collaborators because we're trying to give access to as many people as possible, but we have limited availability right now as we are growing our team slowly, and we will consider your request. We will book a demo, we can discuss it, and we can see how can we move on. I think this is a very important intellectual and professional discussion that we should have, and therefore this is my email. My assistant's email is also down on this slide, and thank you very much for your time, and we will meet in very soon in different webinars as well, discussing the same topic of Valitracks, the world's first full stack digital linguistic validation platform. Thank you very much for your time.